I was lucky to have been born and brought up in Jamaica. At school, English history was taught along with Caribbean history. It was from the latter that I learned about the transatlantic slave trade, the Middle Passage. Growing up, I saw the remnants of the sugar plantations in the west of the island, where once the enslaved worked and where my grandmother lived. In school, I also learnt about our national heroes who were enslaved, treated less than human. Nanny of the Maroons and Samuel Sharp, Paul Bogle, George William Gordon, Marcus Messiah Garvey. As a woman of Caribbean heritage, I am aware that I am a descendant of enslaved people. I have read their stories, watched different movies and documentaries, but there were two occasions that left me literally reeling. First, when I entered a church in rural Jamaica and saw evidence of where chains were inserted along the bottom of the pews to chain the enslaved plantation workers during services, which one assumes they were compelled to attend. The second time that I felt physically affected was on a visit to Ghana. I went to the place where the captured Africans were kept in caves by the sea as they waited to be transported in inhumane conditions across the Atlantic. But it was what I saw above that troubled me even more. Above the caves, a church had been built. I continued to wrestle with the question, how could they worship above ground while such suffering went on below in the caves? Did they not understand the core of the gospel? Message of love for all? The church failed dismally then. Individual representatives and as an institution, the church was deeply and directly complicit in the enslavement of Africans. It even owned plantations, which it only relinquished when it was paid compensation alongside other enslavers. This, however, is not the story told by the British. In fact, the main story repeatedly told is that of the abolitionist, of which William Wilberforce is the main character. In this context, I am reminded that history is his story, told from the perspective of the conqueror. So it would be more than a century later that we would learn about the African, Olaudah Equiano, who would no doubt have influenced Wilberforce in his writings about his life prior to enslavement and his account of the Middle Passage that brought him to the Americas. Many of our churches and cathedrals in some of our main cities, especially those cities linked with the slave trade, have monuments and memorials in tribute to those who were involved directly or indirectly with the trade in people. We see these monuments and memorials, but we rarely engage with them. Are we celebrating the financial contributions that they made to the church or wider society? Do we know where their wealth came from? Or do we even care? Do we understand that we are still living with the legacy of slavery over 200 years after slavery was abolished? At the heart of the world reimagined is the desire for us to journey together as we learn something of the past to inform the present and thereby enabling us to reimagine the kind of world we want to live in and leave as a legacy for future generations.